Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. Sorry for the delay. I live in Flushing, Queens, so it took me an hour and 40 minutes to get here, so I apologize for the delay. My name is Graziano. I'm an urban planning, land use, zoning consultant, and I have been probably one of the most, the loudest voices in opposition to the City of Yes for many, many reasons. But I'm going to talk to you because a lot of you, how many of you have heard of the City of Yes? Okay, a lot of you have. Okay, that's good. Last night I had a meeting in Williamsburg, and out of 40 people in the room, 2 people had heard of it. So it depends on the community. Some communities are a lot more keyed into it than others. So I just want to mention that this proposal or package of proposals, if this goes through in any shape or form, our communities, we're dust. It's over, okay? And so what I've been doing for the past year almost is I've been doing the analysis on this, as well as going from community to community and community board to community board. You're my 107th meeting since November of last year, I believe. And I just took a break. I was gone for a good chunk of the summer, and you're my second meeting since I got back. This is all going to be decided in the next few months, and at the end of the day, it's the city council that's going to decide it. So it's really, really important that everybody understands that this is going to impact everybody and every community across the city. But that being said, lower density communities are the ones that are being targeted, more so than other communities, including places like Bay Ridge and Dyker Heights, Northeast Queens where I live, and Southeast Queens and Southeast Brooklyn, and lots of the city are being targeted by this. So let me just give you a brief arc, which is, we're in year 4 of this. A lot of you probably don't even know this, but this is actually the 4th year in a row that our own government has been trying to massively change our land use. First it was Corey Johnson. Does anybody remember Corey Johnson? Mm-hmm. Yes, he was the former Speaker of the City Council. He came out with something called Planning Together. And as soon as I saw that, I got very suspicious, because I'm the kind of person who actually works with communities, and that sounds like a fake community outreach kind of thing. And indeed it was. His proposal at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, his proposal was to eliminate single-family zoning in the city, force every community board to upzone every decade in perpetuity, and if your community board and your council person couldn't decide what area to sacrifice, then a new city planning commission above the current city planning commission would make the decision for you. And this was his proposal. Now, I organized with a number of other people. In a very short period of time, we spoke to dozens of civic groups, and I think I spoke out of 59 community boards. I think in 6 weeks I spoke to 36 or 38 of them. And there was a single hearing in early 2021 where it was absolutely panned, and he dropped it. And it turns out he was using this as a vehicle to run for comptroller. And who did he lose to? Brad Lander, and now he has a public relations firm. So that's what happens when your plans go awry. You just start a public relations firm. Then we had a new governor come in, Hochul, and she came up with a series of proposals in 2022 and 2023. Last year she called it the Housing Compact. And what she was going to do was eliminate single-family zoning across the entire state of New York. She was going to force every municipality to allow for accessory dwelling units, ADUs. We're going to talk about that tonight. She also wanted to increase development near transit-oriented development, which we're also going to talk about tonight, and also a number of other proposals, as well as take away the rights of local governments to determine their own land use, which, by the way, is enshrined in the state constitution. So in 2022, I created a group called Save One Family New York, and we managed to stop her. Part of it was because she was running for governor. And I told everybody if she wins, I'm nonpartisan, but if she wins the election, it's gonna come back, and sure enough, it came back in 2023. And in 2023, she refused to drop it. And you may remember in 2023 that the state budget was like 6 or 7 weeks late. And that was because of bail reform and the housing compact. And at the end of the day, Carl Hastie, who was the Speaker of the Assembly, refused to sign off because, and good for him, he said, I will not violate the state constitution, which is what she wanted him to do, by taking away the rights of local governments to run their own land use, because that's what this would have done. This year, she put in other land use issues, but they weren't as onerous and they were more voluntary because, again, coming from a political spectrum, unfortunately, she said, I don't want to get in the way of those congressional races that are happening. So I'm not going to force this upon these races to give Republicans an issue to run on. That's her exact quote. Okay, I'm only quoting her. But by this time, the City of Yes was in full motion. What is the City of Yes? It is a 3-part set of packages that were created by Mayor Adams starting the first week of being elected in office. He created a group called the Blast Committee. And the Blast Committee was made up of his donors, the real estate industry, the construction industry, and housing groups. And that's about it. And some business groups. No community groups, no civic associations, no community boards, no good government groups, nothing. And they put together a wish list of proposals. And that wish list was called the Get Stuff Built list. That literally is what it was called. And that became the City of Yes. So the first part of the City of Yes was called carbon neutrality. And this had a lot to do with building codes and bringing in alternative energy. And some of it was okay and some of it wasn't okay, but a lot of people didn't pay any attention to it. It was the least thing that people paid attention to. Then they came out with the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, and that started last fall, and that was voted on in June by the council. And there were a lot of extremely dangerous things in that proposal. We managed to get one thing removed that was going to destroy every community. But beyond that, a lot of the other stuff remained. But even that pales in comparison to the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity. And that is what we're dealing with today. The City Planning Commission has not voted on it yet, but we know they're going to vote in favor because it is their proposal. And then it will go to the City Council. And the City Council will vote on this probably by the end of the year. Now, the mayor says, this is his tagline, just a little more housing in every neighborhood. Sounds great, and whoever wrote that probably got a big fat bonus because it's, again, public relations. It's not reality. This proposal will, if it goes through in any form, your community will be unrecognizable in a decade. It is really that simple. This is a nuclear bomb for our communities. It will not create just a little more housing in every neighborhood. It will deregulate land use across the city of New York. That is exactly what it will do. So let me give you an idea. I put together something for Bay Ridge back in June. I also put something together for Dyker Heights, but I think Bay Ridge will be a good illustration, and then I'll flip to Dyker Heights from there. Okay. So this is something that I want everybody to remember. Does everybody remember when who was living here when Dyker Heights was rezoned in 2007? Yeah, I'm saying the Dyker Heights Civic Association was deeply involved in that rezoning, right? That was under Vincent Gentile, correct? Okay. And he also did the Bay Ridge rezoning.
That was 2005.
2005.
I went with 2007.
Right. So this is the article that came out, and I underlined a few things. A study of Bay Ridge found that the disparity between the built context and the larger buildings permitted by the zoning created incentives to demolish sound existing single-family housing and replace it with larger as-of-right apartments. Okay? The map and text amendments before the council replaced the existing zoning districts with lower density and contextual zoning districts. Areas restricted to single-family or two-family homes increased from 33 to 101 blocks. Okay. So, I just want to make this clear. The goal of this proposal is to undo everything that we did. Now, I was an advisor or designed most of the contextual rezonings in Queens during the Bloomberg administration, and I advised on many others outside of Queens. I created a number of categories, including the R2A anti-McMansion zone, which is widely mapped in eastern Queens in particular, where I live. And this was all done because we knew that the zoning that had been put in 1961 wasn't really reflecting our homes. And this was not about us making money, this is about us protecting our basic community. All of these rezonings that were done understanding that development was still going to happen, that there was still plenty of room for growth in every community where this happened. Well, Mayor Adams has stated publicly that the contextual rezonings were a mistake. They should have never happened, and that they're racist. Now, my response to that is, go talk to the communities in Southeast Queens, which are 95% African American and who all got rezoned to protect their communities. Tell them that it's racist. Tell Northeast Queens, which is predominantly Asian American, tell them that it's racist. And all the other communities around the city where this has happened, tell them that it's racist. Because again, using race as an argument to push your development agenda is very typical of this mayor and this administration. But it's not true, and I want to make that very clear. This is part of the proposal. This is their overview. What is the goal? The goal is to create gentle density in low-density communities. What is gentle density according to the Department of City Planning? Well, it's to allow accessory dwelling units on all 1- and 2-family properties in the city of New York. What's an accessory dwelling unit? An accessory dwelling unit is an attic, a basement or a cellar, a room added to your home, a garage conversion, or a new house in your backyard up to 800 square feet. That's an accessory dwelling unit. Accessory dwelling units are another unit. All 1- and 2-family properties will essentially be 3-unit properties as of right, if this goes through. Okay. The accessory dwelling units we're opposed to because obviously this is an immediate doubling of density in most communities. This is just a basic, this will be the basic as of right in your communities, okay? Now, if you live in a transit zone, actually, let me talk about this first. This is another thing called district fixes. That's what they're calling it, district fixes. I don't call them district fixes because our districts don't need fixing. District fixes will destroy our basic zoning regulations. So for example, in your R3X zone, which is right here by Dyker, by the golf course here, where the big houses are, right now you need a 35-foot wide lot to build a home. Well, that'll be 25 feet. And right now it's a 0.6 floor area ratio. That's the size of the building to the size of the lot. Well, now it'll be a 0.75. These are not small changes, and there's a lot of other changes too. To height, to density, taking away your side yards, taking away your backyard. All backyards will now go from 30 feet to 20 feet. Front yards will stay the same unless you're in a transit-oriented development zone where you can now build an apartment building in an area that's zoned for 1- and 2-family homes. And much of Dyker Heights and almost all of Bay Ridge is covered by the proposed transit zone. So there's a whole mess of things here I'm going to talk about. They also want to get rid of all parking requirements for all new housing in the city of New York, whether it's a 1-family home or a 300-unit apartment. All new housing will not need on-site parking. Now, the public reason they say is because cars are evil, and people who drive cars are very, very evil. We know this. The real reason is that every one of those parking spaces costs a developer between $50,000 and $70,000 per parking space. So if you now, I'm a developer, and I've challenged city planning publicly on this. If you're a developer, and let's say you're building in an R6 zone, and you're building a 40-unit building. Right now you need 20 parking spaces on site, in the basement, wherever it's gonna be. Now you don't have to have those 20 spots. Let's say each of those spots is $50,000. Now you can pocket $1 million as a developer. That's an additional $1 million in profit. And some developers even said, oh yes, we'll turn that space that we would normally have a parking garage, we'll turn that into amenities so that we can charge more rent for the units that are being built. Now, again, the whole goal of this proposal is to get rid of all zoning regulations to allow development everywhere at high densities. And their argument is, we need this to happen, and if we build enough housing, well then the rents are gonna go down. This is a complete falsehood. It is completely untrue. Totally, utterly untrue. Long Island City is the fastest growing community in the United States. It has added 30,000 units of housing in the last 15 years, 30,000 units. The rents have gone up from $3,000 a month to $5,500 a month in the same period of time. And that has happened in downtown Brooklyn, and in Greenpoint and Williamsburg, and in Hudson Yards, and anywhere else that they have upzoned, this is what happens. So this is not going to happen, because by the way, this entire proposal is not creating any affordable housing. They say it's going to create affordable housing, but it's not. This is for market rate rental units replacing owner-occupied housing. How many of you own a home? Okay, almost everybody in the room. Right. The goal here is to replace owner-occupied housing with market rate rental units. That is the ultimate goal. Here's Bay Ridge. This map that you see here shows what happened after the rezoning occurred. About 50% of Bay Ridge is zoned 1 and 2 family now. The yellow area is the single family zoning, and the orange and red areas are 1 and 2 family zones. R4A, R3-1, etc. These are all various different types of zoning. Right? This is your area that's zoned single family. It's about 24 blocks, 600 properties. These are your 2 family areas. And the other areas are lower density multifamily zones. These are areas that allow for row houses, 2 or 3 family homes, garden apartment complexes, and stuff like that. Okay. There's also a special Bay Ridge district. That is a special district for Bay Ridge that also guides development. The goal of this proposal is to get rid of all special districts across the city. All the things that protect the character of a community will be tossed out, including the Bay Ridge Special District. Okay. All of the areas that you now see in orange, those are all going to go from 1 and 2 family zones to 3 units per property as of right. So as you can see, most of Bay Ridge would go to that. And as I say, in addition, minimum front, side, and rear yards, lot sizes and widths will be decreased, while maximum floor area ratio, height, and lot coverage will be increased. Now, everything you see in the blue or the green, that's the transit zone that they want to put in. Okay, it covers more than 90% of Bay Ridge. What is the transit zone? The transit zone will allow for up to 5-story apartment buildings in areas that currently only allow 1 or 2 family homes. On a wide street, that's every street that's in red, on a wide street, every property will be eligible for an apartment building. On narrow streets, the corners will be eligible, but they haven't really defined what a corner is, because a corner could be the corner property plus a whole bunch of other properties that a developer buys connected to that corner. And it will increase the floor area ratio. They say it's going to be on a large lot. Their definition of a large lot is 5,000 square feet. That's a 50 by 100, just to let you know. So in Dyker Heights, a typical house is on anywhere between 18 and 25 feet. So essentially, if you're in this transit zone, all you need to do is buy 2 homes, 2 single family or 2 two-family homes in an area where it's eligible, and as of right, they can be torn down and replaced with a 3, 4, or 5-story apartment building with no parking. Okay, so what I did was I show just the single family area because it's the easiest to illustrate to you, but this is the area in Bay Ridge. Every spot that you see here, the little kind of squares, those are all properties that are 5,000 square feet or more. So these are all properties today that if this goes into being, these properties would be immediately eligible for a developer to purchase them, tear it down, and build an apartment building. Okay?
But that's if the owner wants to sell. Well, how many if the owner doesn't want to sell? They can't just seize property.
They're not going to seize property, but if one owner sells, the rest of the block will go. Okay? This is not a situation where the city is taking your property. Their statement is, we're not forcing anybody to do anything. But if you create the situation, it will happen. And as soon as one person does it, there will be a domino effect. That is very, very common and happens all the time.
Is that what they call blockbusting?
Well, it's blockbusting in the sense that if you're creating the conditions to allow for more development, then you're going to, obviously, I mean, if you saw what I said at the beginning, where the city actually said the zoning that was in Bay Ridge encouraged apartment buildings to tear down single-family homes because the zoning didn't match. They changed the zoning to stop that, but now they're going backwards. This is what they want to do. They want to go back and reverse everything that we did 17 or 20 years ago to stop this from happening. So there are also a number of parcels you see in blue. It's another 64 additional parcels that if a developer bought 1 or 2 of them together, they would have that 5,000 square feet to build their apartment. So there are some major concentrations, obviously, where this happens. So here's just some illustrations. This is a single-family home on Ridge Boulevard, right here. And this is one on Shore Road. Okay. Based on the size of the property, the one on Ridge Boulevard would go from a 1-family home to a 30-unit, up to 30-unit apartment building, as of right. And the one on Shore Road would be up to 15 units.
I believe that was the Victorian home on 85th Street, the beautiful Victorian home.
Yes. Okay. So now I'm going to show you what happens when it's not just that one building, right? So here's your 30 units. These are all 1 unit, 1 unit, 1 unit. These are all single-family homes that I'm pointing out. And that gives you an idea of what can happen. 40 units, 48 units, 41 units, 31 units, 11 units, etc. And again, this would all be as of right. This is not them coming in for a variance or a rezoning. This would actually be as of right if this goes through.
Doesn't it have to meet the criteria?
The criteria is 5,000 square feet.
As far as services?
Nope.
Water line?
Nope.
No,
Nope. There is no infrastructure included in this proposal. There is 0 of anything included in this proposal. And there's a reason for that. And we're going to get to that when I show you. Then I'm going to show you the campus. Folks, this is another proposal they have, which is to allow for campuses to build at a higher density as well. So this is the visitation campus. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And then right now it's for sale. I'm sure you're also aware of that. The school closed and all that. So this is one of the largest pieces of property in Brooklyn that's underdeveloped, right? It's 7.3 acres. It's very large. It's currently zoned R3-1, which allows detached and semi-detached 1 and 2 family houses. So today, if the whole property was demolished, a developer could build 150 semi-detached 1 or 2 family homes as of right today, which would be a lot, but it would be all 1 and 2 family homes. Okay. If half of the property were kept, because there is some discussion about that part of the property would remain a convent and the rest of it would be sold. Then it would be 72 semi-attached 1 or 2 family homes, basically half. Now, under the campus infill provision, this would allow for approximately 40 units in 3-story buildings on that portion that you see there, and what that would look like. Okay? Now, with the transit-oriented development, it allows for a higher density. So now, if you bumped it up to R4 zoning from the current zoning, now you're at 5-story buildings. Okay? And ultimately, with the campus infill, you can get it up to 800 units if you're at an R5 zone. So this is exactly what could be done as of right. And it says, finally, even if visitation was not within the proposed TOD zone, all religious properties across the city will be allowed to build at this density, even if they're not in this transit zone. This is also in the proposal. Every religious property in the city will be given carte blanche to build at extremely high densities, with all parking requirements eliminated. Okay, now, why did I say there's no infrastructure? Because in their environmental impact statement, the city lied really badly. Like, really badly. Their statement is that this proposal will only generate 58,000 to 109,000 units across the entire city over 15 years. I want you to understand what those actual numbers are. Per community board, this proposal would only generate 65 to 125 units per community board per year. I can tell you that your community board is generating more than that today. Okay? We just had a report from last week that the city is on record number of building permits in the history of the city, that over the last 6 months, there are 150,000 units in the pipeline to be built between 2024 and 2028. That's without the city of Yes. That's with our current zoning. Our current zoning was put into place in 1961. Right now, if you never changed it, we could accommodate another 8 to 12 million people. Not infrastructure-wise, but in terms of the zoning. They want to change this back to 1916, the 1916 zoning, which would allow up to 55 million people in the city of New York. So they want to go from, they call it outdated, 1961, they want to go to prehistoric to 1916 and take away all of the protections that we have in our communities to make it a livable place, okay? So this is nonsense. These numbers are garbage. The commercial part, they never even filed an environmental impact statement, which is incredible. And this map is supposed to show you, like a grain of sand in the desert or a drop of water in the ocean, that this is not going to have any effect on any neighborhood, which is why in their environmental impact statement on the left-hand side, those are all the things that aren't going to be affected by this proposal, including water and sewer infrastructure, energy, solid waste, land use zoning and public policy, socioeconomic conditions, air quality, public health, etc. And most importantly, neighborhood character. Neighborhood character will not be affected by this. Okay? So that just gives you an understanding of Bay Ridge. I'm going to briefly show you Dyker Heights, now that you understand this. This is the article from then, from 2007. Your rezoning. Okay, same thing. I'll just breeze through that. And here's Dyker. So right now, about 50% of Dyker Heights is zoned for 2-family zoning. You have your R3X zone near the golf course. That's a detached zone. R4A is detached, R3A detached, and the rest of them are semi-attached 1 and 2 family zoning and row houses. Those are the R4B zones where you have the green in the front and the rear alleys with the driveways. That's the R4B zone. Okay. Now, that's your current 2-family zoning. That's your current low-density multifamily zoning. And again, everything you see in sort of the light brown, that all would be allowed 3 units per property under this as a baseline. Now, everything you see in blue, that's all in the transit zone. So more than 50% of Bay Ridge will be in the transit zone. I'm sorry, Dyker.
Maybe you should have Dyker.
Sorry, that's what I meant. More than 50% of Dyker will be in the transit zone.
Wow.
And there's your wide streets. So again, everything you see in red, those are your wide streets where every property will be eligible for an apartment building. And this is something that wasn't in the Bay Ridge one, which is that all of these areas have what are called commercial overlays. These are commercial strips overlaying your basic zoning. All commercial overlays in the lower density areas will be allowed to have quote unquote town center zoning, which will allow for up to 4 stories of residential above a ground floor commercial. So as you can see, that's on 13th, that's on Fort Hamilton Parkway, there's on 14th, etc. Again, this will have dramatic effect upon your community. So that's it in a nutshell. These are, as I said, I've done over 24 of these studies now. I did it for Manhattan Beach, Victoria and Flatbush, I did a whole bunch in Queens. These are all done, and unless you think this is only going to affect the low density areas. Campus infill, this is the Washington houses, which is a NYCHA development, 97 to 104th Streets in Manhattan. What do you have there? A dozen 15-story buildings with a lot of green space, correct? Well, if this goes through, that's what can be built there as of right. So it's not just affecting the lower density communities, it will affect the high density communities, and that will increase the units from about 1,500 units today, plus another 3,000 additional units. And again, this isn't just for NYCHA, this is for garden apartment complexes. This is for any piece of property 1.5 acres or more. It could even be an undeveloped piece of property in Staten Island, it doesn't matter. As long as it's 1.5 acres or more, they will be able to build at a high density anywhere. So these are the kinds of things that our own government is trying to do to us. And one of the things that I always say at the end of my presentations, and again, I'm going quickly because I know you guys want to go and watch your debate. Some of you may and some of you may not, I don't know. But my point is that what I ask everybody is, given what you know, and given what the mayor and the Department of City Planning and their allies in government are trying to do here, along with all of the other issues that we have in our communities, if you had a choice for Dyker Heights or Bay Ridge or other parts of the city to have your neighborhood remain as part of the city or become its own community, which would you choose? And at every single one,
Take my own community.
what?
Take your own community.
Take your own community. How many would rather that Dyker Heights become its own community,
Right.
rather than remain part of the city? How many want to remain part of the city? Nobody. Right. So we have actually introduced legislation in Albany to allow all of our communities to become their own towns.
Oh, nice.
Because we've all had enough. And every community I've spoken to, it doesn't matter where they are in the city, they all feel the same way, which is, you know, we are able, some communities aren't able to float on their own, but Dyker Heights certainly can, and Bay Ridge can, and other parts of southern Brooklyn in particular can.
Mm-hmm.
Most of Queens can, all of Staten Island can, and a big chunk of the Bronx can too. These are areas with high owner occupancy. Dyker Heights has almost 60% owner occupied. 60%. Bay Ridge, it's a little under 50%. These are good numbers. Okay, these are places that could float on their own. Because, again, we're all dealing with so many different issues. This is just the last one that everybody is doing. This is an article which just came out that I wrote Have you ever heard of the Juniper Park Civic Association in Middle Village and Glendale and Maspeth? Yes. So they come out with a glossy magazine 4 times a year. This is Bob Holden. You may have heard of him, council member.
Yes.
Yeah, he used to be the president of Juniper for about 30 years before he ran for council. And he was a graphic design professor at Long Island University, and he created the Juniper Berry, which is this glossy 80-page magazine that they put out every 3 months. So I have an article called Gaslighting in the Time of the Adams Administration, and it's online if you want to go look at it. We just put it out a week ago. But this just talks about the lies that this administration are telling us and their allies. And the media are not helping. The mainstream media, definitely not helping. I've gotten good responses from local newspapers, CBS News, actually, and a few national magazines, but most of them just parrot the press releases coming from the mayor. They do not actually look at what the reality of this and what this is going to do to our communities. So with that, are there any questions?
I have a question.
Sure. Do you want to turn
Yeah,
off the
I'm
light?
gonna turn the lights on right now. All three. Thank you so much. So I guess the question is gonna be like everyone else. What can we do to stop this?
So the first thing I'll tell you is that this is going to the city council. We have 51 council members. We need 26 votes to stop this from happening. It's really that simple. We need 26 votes. And I always say we don't need 26 votes, we need 30 votes. Or 32 votes, because what happens is people say they're against it, and at the very end they change their vote because they made some deal with the mayor or with the speaker of the city council, or whatever it's going to be. So we have a situation where I know how many people are opposed to this already. And with the commercial part, we had 17 that voted no, which was good, but not enough. So now we really need a minimum of 26. I know that I'm not worried about Staten Island. I'm not worried about much of Queens. I know my council members in the Bronx and the ones in Brooklyn that are already against this, but we're not at 26. So we need more people to vote against this. The only leverage we have, let's say we have 3 pieces of leverage. Leverage 1 is to say, if you vote against this, if you vote in favor of this, we're going to throw you out of office. That's number 1. There is a guy named Rafael Salamanca, who's the land use chair for the city council. He has actually stated publicly, the goal of this is also to stop council members from being responsible to their voters. Because if we actually allow more development as of right, and council members don't have to be on the hook to their constituents, well, that's a good thing. Okay, this is outrageous. The council has very little power. They only have power in 3 places: budget, oversight, and land use. That's it. So now you're basically giving away your biggest power, which is land use, over the things that happen in your community. And you're going to give that away? So this is the land use chair. He is term limited and running for Bronx Borough president. So that should tell you something. We have 17 council members who are term limited. Many of them are running for other things. Some of them are getting jobs, and they are auditioning for their new jobs right now. Okay? It is really, really important that we make sure that those council members who are running for re-election understand that if they do this, we will do everything in our power to get rid of them. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is to sue. Because this environmental impact statement is the most grossly deficient impact statement I've ever seen in the 30 years I've been doing this. As I said, it minimizes what it's going to do, right? It's absolutely minimizing this, which is outrageous. So that's a legal way of doing it. We file what's called an Article 78. That happens after the process is over, and you have maybe a 15 to 20% chance of winning, even if you have a great case. And you have to have money and resources and stuff to do that. The third thing is, to get your elected officials at the state level to co-sponsor the bills that we have put in at the state level to allow our communities to remove ourselves from the city. And that's really, really important. All of these things should be happening at the same time. Because the fact is, every one of these folks who are representing, they're supposed to be representing the wishes of their community. They're not. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. And again, democracy is about representing the interests of your voters first. I always say community first, the greater city second, and your own interests third. Unfortunately, with most elected officials, it's the other way around. But that's the way it's supposed to be. So it's really important, again, that the electeds that you know co-sponsor this legislation in Albany. Because we need to have, if we're not able to stop this, we don't have too many options. And that's pretty much it.
Barbara?
No, I just have a question. You keep talking about remove ourselves from the city. We should become a town.
Yep.
That's sort of like, sounds like seceding in a way.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, it sounds great, but I know there was a town in Long Island, I think it was Shirley or Mastic, when they succeeded, and then they were no longer eligible for police, sanitation, and their taxes went up, and then they turned around and they went back.
I know what you're talking about. That was a little different. They had a name change. They didn't actually secede. And that was also 25 years ago. That was a very different situation. I can tell you, how many of you have seen your property taxes skyrocket in the last 10 years? Okay, right. So last year, Brad Lander, who's not my favorite person, but he came out with a great report. And the report showed that our communities, particularly in the outer parts of the city, okay, we are paying 300 to 400% tax rates, as you can see here, than Brooklyn Heights, Greenpoint, Williamsburg, most of Manhattan, and Brownstone, Brooklyn. So we are actually floating the city.
We know that. It's been disproportionate for years.
Correct, but it's getting worse.
Nice.
So we are actually, I've actually compared our tax rates, because this is the first thing that people say is, oh, the taxes. And I've compared it to towns in Westchester and villages in Westchester and in Nassau County in particular. And I can tell you that the taxes that you're paying for property taxes are comparable to what folks are paying there. In fact, you're paying way more per square foot than they are, and they're getting much better services than we are. In addition, you will no longer pay New York City income tax. That's gone if you're not part of the city anymore, right? In addition, yes, you'll have to do schools taxes, but it's based on the number of students that you have. Do you know that we've lost almost 200,000 students in the city of New York in the last 10 years? Did you know that? Do you know that David Banks said last week that that's the only thing I'm going to mention about the migrants have been a godsend because they've added in 40,000 kids into the school system.
Why is there still buildings?
I'm just telling you that this is what was said. So we are in a situation where nothing is a panacea. Miss, I'm just responding to you. Nothing is perfect, but when you have a city that we have that has become increasingly ungovernable, and it's being run by people who have no interest in working with communities. All of our communities are reasonable. All of those rezonings that we did had development built into them, as we said. And then there were areas that were upzoned dramatically. So all of this was done already, and what they're trying to do is to just blow up everything.
They want to blow
So
up
is this New York State proposal that we have about seceding? Is there a bill number?
Yes, Assembly Bill 9417.
Say it again?
9417.
Is that Jamie Williams?
It's Jamie Williams' bill, yes, which I helped her write.
Yes.
So, and it was your bill number, okay.
9417. So the session is over, so we're gonna be reintroducing this in January.
9417, okay.
And, we've made this very clear, again, that we know that this is not an easy road, but this is crazy, and our communities are gonna be
At
gone.
least we can control our own destiny.
Yes.
Correct.
No, we're better off being on our own. We can afford it.
Yeah.
We're better off.
Paul,
We're better
excuse
off.
me.
We'll do a
So,
better job.
yeah,
We will do a much better job. I'd rather us be on our own.
Paul, thank you, first of all. He's been all around the city. This takes a ton of work for him, and he's done it for a lot of communities. So, first, thank you very much. I took Paul's work when they had the hearings for Community Board 10 about specifically visitation, and I quoted some of his work, and I was told by our elected officials that I was full of you-know-what, that I was fear-mongering. I was queried on Facebook and Twitter saying I was a liar. By extension, they told you were a liar. Now, has anybody in all of these presentations ever said, well, according to the 1,500-page real document, you are wrong? Has anyone ever told you are wrong and say why?
The only person who has said I'm a liar is the chair of the City Planning Commission, Dan Garodnick, who, when I gave my public testimony on July 10th, turned off my mic, threw me off of Zoom, and then proceeded to lecture to me for almost 5 minutes. And even developer people, because I know people who are, they actually it was getting back to me like, why are you going after Graziano like that? That's crazy. Like, what are you doing? So this is not about reality. This is not about who's telling the truth or a lie. This is propaganda.
Yes.
That's all this is.
They can't point to a regulation that you're
No.
incorrect about.
I'm using their own documents.
Yes.
Everything that you see here, this is their own documents. They are not doing the analysis that I'm doing. They're creating theoretical models. And they're plugging in the theoretical models into the most complicated city in the United States. I'm actually doing this neighborhood by neighborhood, community board by community board. And I've done more here. You can see here. Okay, these are all the areas that I've done deep studies. And Dyker Heights isn't included because I just finished that right before I came over here. So I've done community board-wide studies, I've done neighborhood-wide studies all over the city. And they're not doing any of that because they don't want to do it because they know that if they do it, it will show the same details that I'm showing you. That's the reason.
Does anybody have a question for Paul? Okay?
No, I just want to thank Paul.
Well,
He's been doing yeoman's job, he's been all over the place.
Well,
And
I
he's really a wealth of knowledge, information, he's been doing this for years, and I really, Paul, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
And I agree with a friend, I want to thank you really for coming down here.
My pleasure.